Hey everybody, my name is Seth and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be covering Mars and Leo in the Mars Through the Signs series. If you want to watch the whole video, you can go to patreon.com/CanceVirgoAstrology. If you want to talk to me about the series, you can use the hashtag Mars Through the Signs on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good shit. I'll be checking out the hashtags. So this is the abridged version of Mars and Leo. Hopefully you guys enjoy. I'll see you at the end. So Mars, as we see it in astrology, Mars is the planet of projection, right? And it's the consequences of projection for better or for worse. So some of the themes that can be aligned with Mars and projection is something like passion. You see passion and projection being put together in themes like sex and themes like violence. Things that kind of typically are associated with Mars. You can also see Mars and projection being aligned with things and themes like war, another typical association, and then also something like peacekeeping strategies, which is a projection of power, just like war is. It's just for different means, and that's not as typical, but it is certainly something to be associated with Mars. So the main idea to keep in mind is projection. That's what Mars is all about, projecting outwardly and affecting what's going on outwardly in its own environment, right? So then you can go to the idea of why Mars is kind of the typical masculine planet, that big idea of projection. And when I use the word masculine, we're not talking about cultural masculinity as we see masculinity now. We're talking about archetypal masculinity, which is a broad brushstroke, which really boils down to projection and the ability to affect the world that's going on around you via projection, to be straight head on and actually affect something through action and activation. That's what archetypal masculinity is about, and that's exactly where Mars sits within the pantheon of planets. These are all big ideas that are aligned with natal Mars, Mars that is fused with our motivation. And when I say it's fused with our motivation, it means that we are responsible for answering questions like propagating what, advancing where, and conquering what. And when you use these associated terms with Mars, it's always up to us to answer the question of what is the context of that? What is the motivation of that? If Mars wants to project, we have to say, what is Mars projecting? Mars is represented within the tarot, and it's represented by this card right here. This is the Tower, and I'm also using the Crowley deck, so you're not going to see typical imagery on the tarot cards, but this is the Tower within the Crowley deck. And what this card represents is destruction, if you want to put the simplest label you can on it. Now, why this card represents destruction? And I think the answer to that question is that it's progress that you did not necessarily ask for. It's progress that is not convenient or at your best convenience, I guess you could say. It's waking up, realizing that you were at the starting line of a race you did not sign up for. Everything that made you feel like you were safe. Now we can move on to Leo and talk about what Leo represents within the tarot. Leo is represented by this card right here, and it is called the Lust card in the Crowley deck. I believe it's called Strength in the Rider-Waite decks, or in the typical tarot decks, and I also think it's in a different position in the regular tarot decks. I believe the Crowley deck moves this card and moves the Adjustment card, or the Justice card in a regular deck, and move those things around. But it doesn't matter. Leo is represented by Lust. And what this card is really about is, funny enough, not the lion. It's not about the lion. And you will find it will grow into something beautiful. Now, this is definitely a unique interpretation of Leo. This is definitely something more than likely you have not heard before, and that is because we're dealing with Leo within the tarot, which means we're dealing with Leo without the context of us, so to speak. It's about the idea of Leo without planets influencing it, without houses influencing it, without aspects influencing it. Leo is going to be Leo without other planets transiting through the sign. Leo is going to be Leo without it having us to provide a house for it to be sitting in, without our perspective. When we look at Leo in a certain planet, we're looking at that planet's interpretation of Leo. Jupiter in Leo does not tell you more about Leo. It adds dimension to the sign, and it only adds dimension because the planet has added itself into the equation. Leo is Leo without that planet transiting there. Again, having Leo on your midheaven does not tell you more about Leo. It's an interpretation from the 10th house, your 10th house, looking at Leo. And that, again, adds some dimension because it's adding in some influence that was not there before. So what we're dealing with is Leo looking at us. So today we're going to be adding in just one certain context, just one certain perspective. And again, it's going to be Leo looking at Mars, not Mars looking at Leo. So the Tower meets Lust, the Mars meets Leo. And what we find when we look at Leo looking at Mars is a refinement. Leo is referenced directly within the tarot. And it's referenced by this card right here. And it is the Seven of Wands. And what this card represents on its own, without the complete story of the other decans, is the kind of worst of what Leo is known for. Because this card represents the idea of Leo being bold and commanding and aggressive and defensive as all hell. Very bossy sort of energy is this card on its own. Once we cover all the decans, we will understand it from a different perspective, from a more well-rounded perspective. But I just did want to bring that up. It is Mars and Leo's referenced directly. So, let's talk about the decans. Let's talk about this complete story we're going to be talking about. We're going to be covering the 30 degrees of Leo. Each and every sign in the wheel that is the chart, at least Western chart, 30 degrees is dedicated to each and every sign, the 12 signs, 360, blah, blah, blah. So, with Leo, like every sign, we're going to be covering the first decan, which is 0 to 9 degrees, the second decan, which is 10 to 19 degrees, and the third decan, which is 20 to 29 or 30 degrees. That is, every sign is broken down that way by decan. We're going to be covering Leo's 3 decans. And we're going to be covering Mars traveling through those 3 decans, but not from Mars' perspective, from Leo's perspective when Mars comes through. So hopefully we have that settled, we have that in there. Our introduction is all over, and we can launch into why you guys are watching this. I lied. The decans highlight why they are important. The decans highlight the transition between signs. Signs don't just go off and on like a light switch. You're going to have influences of different signs. If there were no decans, you would just go from Virgo to Libra, from Cancer to Leo, and there would just be no transition. It would just be cut and dry, done, done, done. And with the decans, you actually find the fluidity. So the first decan of Leo is represented by this card right here. This card is called Strife, I believe. Yes. And it is the 5 of Wands. What this card represents is really the idea of being able to withhold. The idea of being able to hold back, to be able to deliberate, to be able to reserve. So we left off with Cancer and the idea of being beyond your environment, being beyond your friends, being beyond your situation, being beyond your job, being beyond these things because you've outgrown them. It's the mentality of being a big fish in a little pond when you get to that last decan of Cancer. So you end up needing spice in life. You end up needing a little dash of fire. You end up needing that push to kind of go outside of what you're used to and to find something new and to build something bigger than yourself. And it's the world outside. There is always something bigger than yourself. So when you see Mars in this first decan of Leo, you find the little fish in the huge energy. So you actually have energy to work on what you're passionate about, as well as make money and survive in this. So the second decan of Leo is represented by this card right here, and it is the 6 of Wands. And this card is called, this is a card Victory. That is allowed to grow. This is a card that can expand and expound and really create something massive that can really get itself some gravity. It can really start pulling things and having things orbit around it. This is why there was strife, because I needed to earn my ability. I need to be able to show the world that I'm not just talented, I'm actually skilled. When you eat, you can turn into a big fish. In this decan of Leo, there is an inherent kind of growth that happens. At least it should be inherent. If it's not inherent, then you have some work to do to catch up and understand where you're actually at in life. Where you understand work is necessary. You understand strife is necessary. You understand retention and to withdraw and to be silent and to encroach on what you want slowly is necessary. But you will now need to understand the importance of the strike, the importance of making the kill, the importance of not missing out. Last decan of Leo is represented by this card right here, something that we briefly talked about, which we will now get a new perspective on, the Seven of Wands. And this card is called Valor. This card is when you've got that, you made that role, you got that role, you aced that interview, you got that job. You're now in a position of power based on acceptance from others. You're winning races, and now people want you to run certain races for them because you're a part of a team, you're a part of a group, you're a part of something larger than yourself. But when does that backfire? To accomplish. And if we're not accomplishing this together, then you do not have me. I am not yours. That's what this energy is about. When you can throw your fist down and say no. When you can look somebody in the eye and be totally willing, totally confident, and totally honest, and with conviction say, we will go to war. I will fight you on this. And what this card really represents is the idea of understanding what the struggle was all for. This is where you kind of get a reality check when it comes to your passions and when it comes to the steady growth. Now that you're a medium-sized fish, or because you're not a big fish yet. You're not a big fish until you hit Sagittarius. But now that you're a medium-sized fish who can make some decisions that really impact what's going on in your environment, Mars, is this all for you? Ask yourself that. What am I doing all this hard work for? Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully there is something for you guys to take from this. If you are interested in watching the entire series and really figuring out what I'm talking about and what are these sentences that I'm cutting off, what are the full sentences and what's in between all these cuts, you can go to patreon.com/CancerVirgoAstrology and check out this full video. You can check out all the full videos so far in the Mars Through the Signs series. You can use the hashtag Mars Through the Signs to ask me any questions that you have on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also leave a comment below. I'm going to really try to keep up with those and keep communicating with you guys. I really want to build a community around this and start gaining some diverse perspectives on what the planets and the signs and astrology in general really represent. And hopefully you guys can gain some more diverse perspectives based on what I'm putting out there. So thanks again for watching. Be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, be sure to share, and I will see you guys later. Stay tuned, because you never know when I'll be talking about you next.